Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today we're going to talk about chronographs. And a chronograph, the word chrono comes from time and graph for writing, so it's sort of a time writer. But what it's usually associated with is timing some event, sporting events, racing events, or some kind of thing that requires some kind of precise timing other than minutes and hours. So let's take a look at the chronographs we have. The first one is F.P. Journe's Chronograph Sport Titan. Titan is for titanium. And this one is a really expensive one, but it's relatively simple. You have a rocker on it, a sort of like a pusher. It's called a rocker, and you for your start, your stop, and then zeroing back to whatever your starting point is. And you have, in addition to your watch dial, your hour and minute dial, and the background is in yellow, you also have in red, you have three subdials. One makes a rotation every 20 seconds. The one at 6 o'clock is 10 minutes. And then the one up at 10 o'clock is 1/100th of a second. So that thing makes a rotation every 1/100th of a second. And so when you start it and you're timing it, you can come up with some very precise timing up to 1/100th of a second, which is really remarkable. The next one that I want to look at is a Rolex Daytona Cosmograph, and this is Rolex's chronograph watch. Okay. Now the chronograph seconds hand is their sort of the sweep hand they have. They have three subdials. One is a 12-hour counter at 9 o'clock. They have the small seconds at 6 o'clock, and then at 3 o'clock, they have the 30-minute timer on that, or the 30-minute counter. So you have all three of those things are going on at the same time. You have two pushers, and one is to start and stop the chronograph action, and then the one at the bottom down at 4 o'clock is to reset it back to zero. And this layout of having the two pushers at 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock is pretty common. You see that in a lot of chronographs. Now, there's something else that's called the tachymetric scale. And this one is on the bezel. Most of them are on the bezel. And there are some numbers around it that may not make a lot of sense to you, and I'm going to talk about those. One of the things you can do with it in a bit here. All right, so this is a very popular one. By the way, too, the first one we looked at was really expensive. It's over $50,000, and this one is $12,400, and it's like all Rolexes. It has, or most, I think most of them, if not all of them, are COSC certified. Okay, now this next one is probably the best best one in the world. Now it's it's about $48,000, and it's really incredible. The important thing about this, in addition to the layout, which is very different, is what it's running on something called an Agenggraph. Now this is by a company called Agenur, and they have the guy who's the head of it is Jean-Marc Wiedereck, and he's, if not the best watchmaker in the world, is one of the best. That's all he does is make he does those designs. Now Singer makes specialized cars. What they do is that they will put together an engine and a body, and some the people with lots and lots of money want something special, and they make it for them. So they're a car maker, I think they're located in LA, but I'm not positive. Anyway, Now, this particular watch won a Grand Prix award recently, and it was certainly well deserved. It's sort of very backwards from most watches, but it's for a chronograph. The chronograph information is in the center of the watch. And so let me start with where the regular time is. If you look down at 6 o'clock, you can see it says current time 10:09. And the way this works, it has the hour and the minute are sort of these little bezels or little rings that move around and to where you get your time. Now, since this is a chronograph, the information, the chronograph information is in the middle. And you have the buttons you have on it look more like work like a traditional stopwatch. You have in holding the right hand, the thumb is used to start and stop, and then the index finger is to reset it. And that's, if you look at where the pushers are, they're very much like a traditional stopwatch. Again, it has a tachometric track to it with those unusual numbers for it. They don't have, it's not a lot of detail to it like some have. But this one is the what we think of as the second hand, is sort of that long orange sweep hand. That shows the elapsed time since when you started. Where the hour hand is, or the shorter of the two other hands, it's pointing at about 2 o'clock right now. That is the elapsed time in hours. So what this is showing about almost, let's say, 7 hours. So this has been a really long timing on this one. And then the shorter of the two, the little longer of the two hands, it's hard to say, the orange hand, the oranger of the two small hands, is the elapsed time in minutes. The one over there by about 8 o'clock, you can see that. So what you do is when you start it, it's the hands in the middles that are keeping track of the elapsed time in terms of hours and minutes and seconds. And it's that little out thing at 6 o'clock where you read your current time. Really interesting watch. You could spend a whole lot of time on the movement. The movement is really incredible. This watch is really, really very special. Of course, it's almost $50,000, so it's pretty much out of range of most people. Okay, now the Omega Speedmaster Professional. This is one of is famous for not only for the moon watch, but what it's really famous for is the timing that it did for a rocket burn on Apollo 13 when it got into trouble. They had one of these and they had to have the timing just right, otherwise they would have burned up. And so they timed it with a Speedmaster Professional. This particular one is as close to the original, I think, as they have it. This has a caliber 1861, which is based on a Lamania 1873. Now, you're thinking, Lamania is owned by ETA, so it's an ETA movement. It wasn't at that time. When they first came out, this is back in the 60s, before ETA had owned Lamania. Well, now ETA owns both Lamania and Omega, so they can put them together as close as possible. Now, this one is only $5,350, which is, compared to the other ones, really a good deal. That's brand new. And, well, anyway, on the watch, you have the small seconds. You have a 30-minute timer at 3 o'clock, and then you have a 12-hour timer down at 6 o'clock. Now, out to the side, there's the tachometer again. And what I want to do is sort of give you a little example of. I have a chronograph. My chronograph is a vintage Beauvais monorattrapant. And what I'm going to do is show you how the tachometric track works, or how to use it. essentially the numbers on where it has tachometer on the outside there, those numbers have to do with speeds, and they're speeds in kilometers. Okay, so let's take a look at the example. I'm going to give you an example of using an airplane, and then the chronograph that I'm using has a pretty detailed. It's really an old. It's about 70 years old. Okay, so let's take a look at it first. One way to use the tachometer scale is to start with a speed and time it to the speed. Now, I used to have an airplane, and it traveled at about 120 nautical miles an hour, which was about 222 kilometers an hour. And the reason I want to use chronometers is that this has that km on the scale, which means it's measuring in kilometers. So what I want to do is that I'll start it up, and when it hits 222, I'll stop it. So here it goes. There it goes now. And right here. Okay, so what I can see is that in order to go 1 kilometer, it takes about 16 seconds. So, and flying, every time I hit 15 seconds, I've gone a mile. Now, whether you use it for that or something more practical is up to you. And there are a lot of other ways you can do it, but that's just one example of how you can use the tachometric scale. Okay, well, I that'll give you some inkling of it. It's certainly not everything you can do with it, but there are certain things. One of the things I did when taking a look at chronographs, I wanted to get together as many different ones as possible, so you'd have a good rounded view of what's available and what kinds of things go into a chronograph. And one of the places for getting really good chronographs are looking at the Grand Prix d'Horlogerie de Genève, looking at the award-winning ones, because they do have a category just for chronographs. Now, here this year, the 2018, one of the Harboring 2 Doppel Felix won it for the Petite Aiguille, which is not the chronograph award, but one of the awards. And in 2017, the chronograph went to Parmigiani Tonda Chroner anniversary. Anyhow, okay, so what are these two watches? They are what are called rattrapants. A rattrapant's also called a double chronograph, and they're also known as split seconds. The reason they're known as split seconds, you can see the two sweep hands on both of them. And on the Harboring 2, one is black and one is gold. And you have on the Parmigiani, they're both in gold. And what happens is that when you start a rattrapant, it looks like your second hand is just moving. And then your first stop, and then the second one keeps going. And that's what a rattrapant is. It basically would be something, let's say you have two people racing or two horses and you want to time them both. And so they start together, so you start it, and then when the first one finishes the finish line, you hit the thing, and the second one keeps on going. And so that's what a rattrapant is. And I used to call them rattrapant. Double chronograph, I suppose, is just as good. Some people call them that, but I prefer that. Now, I have something very strange, and this watch is called a mono rattrapant. It's got sort of like a zen of one hand clapping. What you do with it, you start it up, and when you start it, the sweep hand starts going, and then when the first one finishes, you push and hold the bottom one. And what it does is really interesting. And when the second one finishes, you release the bottom pusher, and it jumps forward. It doesn't go slowly, but it jumps to the point in time where the second finish was. So that's how they do it with one sweep pan. Doesn't work very well. I mean, it works in terms of accurate, but it's how you're going to record them both. It becomes somewhat tricky, but they do have those. Not too many, I might add. Okay, let's go on. Now, this one, the Ulysse Nardin Marine Regatta, one of my favorite all-time chronographs, and the reason for it is that they have this great video that went with it. So if you can find a video, they have these racing sails. Great, interesting thing. Now, what this does, it has a bidirectional seconds hand, and so depending on, it's got three pushers there. You have the start, stop, the reset, and then you have another one over at 10 o'clock, and it's a minute selector for a countdown. And so with your bidirectional sweep hand, it can go both ways. You can, one thing it'll do is that it goes through the countdown one way and then pop back and then goes the other way. It's really a cool, very, very cool watch. It's also won the Chronograph Award, or the Sports Award, one of the two, in 2017. I think it won the Sports Award in 2017. Okay, some more we have. This one is a very affordable one and a very interesting one. This has a mono pusher. Now, as all of the other ones we've seen, they've had 2 or 3 pushers on them. This one has one, and it works like a toggle. The first time you push it, it starts. The second time you push it, it stops, and the third time you push it, it resets. And this is by the Longines Aviation watch, Type A7, 1935, and this is part of their heritage collection. $3,500, so it's a pretty cool watch. It also has that angled crown on it. Well, actually, it has a whole angled face on it. It's sort of a cool watch. Okay, here's some more, some of which have won the Grand Prix. I put a little Grand Prix award notice next to them. Tudor Black Bay Chrono. This is a nice watch. I put the CHF amount, which is pretty close to $2, but you can convert them yourself if you have dollars or euros or won or whatever unit that you're used to dealing with. This is a very clean watch. It has a date at 6 o'clock, and then it has your tachometer readings around the bezel. The Oris Pro Diver doesn't. It's a diving watch, and it has pretty much your traditional 2 and 4 o'clock pushers on it. It's $47.50. It's a nice diver and chronograph. Your Hamilton Khaki Aviation Pioneer Auto is it's another very simple one. It doesn't have a tachometer track on it, and but it's a good price, $18.70 for that. The Maurice Lacroix Acron Auto Chronograph. This is a little more formal, actually. It's got the 3 subdials on it that's typical of a chronograph. Some of them have 2, like that Hamilton, and the Tudors, some have 3. There are probably some with 4. I don't know. Okay, and finally, here's the last group of them. Now, 2 of them were Grand Prix winners: the Zenith El Primero Lightweight and the Piaget Altiplano. The Zenith is, I have it because, well, beside being a winner, it's got the El Primero Lightweight, and it's a lightweight one that pretty hefty price on these. So the bottom price is the one I was able to find it new in the secondary market. It's a few years old. It won back in, I don't know, 2014 or so, or 2015. Same with the Piaget Altiplano. But notice they haven't really dropped the bottom on the pricing on that has not really dropped that much. And that's one of the things, your Grand Prix winners, they hold their value a little more because there aren't that many of them. Now the last two I have, a couple German watches, a Sin 103 TI-IFR. IFR is for Instrument Flight Rules. This is a cool watch with really great looms on it. And the other one is one I really haven't talked about at all, I don't think, a Moulet Glashütte SAR Flagger Chronograph, with the reference of MI 4133MB, and this is 3155. Now this is an interesting one. The Moulet has got the pushers and the crown on the left side of the watch. Now, sometimes that's for left-handed people who like to wear it on their right hand. But I'm left-handed. I like to wear it on my left hand, like everyone else. But anyway, that's another version and another available. Both of those are relatively inexpensive, and the two, the Zenith and the Piaget, are relatively expensive. Thing that's neat about the Piaget Altiplano, sort of a dress watch. So you can have that for a dress watch if you're hanging with a dressier crowd. So anyway, well, listen, that was you could say much more. There's lots of interesting things about chronographs. I'd like to hear what you have to say about it, what you think about it. And as always, this is an invitation to subscribe if you'd like. Until next time, this is Bill Standish for Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection.